First of all, welcome to today's acquisition session. So today I'm going to discuss how I approach customer acquisition via paid channels. So this is including the prerequisites needed for running a great campaign, getting that all set up, your strategy around where to find and create good content, ads, experimentation, messaging, and reporting. So in this session, you learn how to navigate that return on ad spend, how to navigate around the privacy changes, iOS 14 and so on, and learn from other incredibly successful campaigns that will help you grow your business as well. So of course, I'll be adding in kind of a few trade secrets here and there that I hope will also help you move to the next level. So if you're already running some campaigns, there'll be something in there for you as well. So to get started, we're going to be first looking at the fundamentals of marketing. So what does it mean to acquire a customer? So a huge amount of customer acquisition is learning where the customer is at from a behavioral and psychological point of view. So once you understand this, the relevant platforms, messaging and positioning tend to fall into place pretty rapidly from there. So your understanding of your customers will typically make or break campaigns. When I'm training people on our team to work on customer acquisition, I always tell them that it's the clients that understand their customer best that do the best. So you can only provide so much information, and the understanding of the customer has to be relayed effectively to your marketer or for your agency if you're working with one to nail this process. So from there, we're going to talk about Facebook and Google Ads. The principles and reasons for choosing Facebook remain relatively static across all social media platforms. So that's why I've chosen Facebook to focus on, because it's the primary social platform still. I know TikTok is rising, but the principles and the reasons why you would choose that platform are relatively the same in comparison to Google Ads, for example. And so you can usually assume that what you learn about social platforms can correlate across most of them. And lastly, we will dig into best practices. So it's critical to know and understand this because platforms can be easily set up incorrectly. So if you mess up the setup, that's one thing, but 50% of your potential success is going to be in the setup, and the other half is really going to be felt in your creative process. So creatives are half the battle here as well. That's important. So this is my favorite phrase that I like to kick off all my presentations with on advertising, because people have this misconception that advertising is intrusive, but I don't think anyone has ever hated their favorite brand showing them an ad for a favorite product. Have you ever hated an ad for a game you'll never play on Instagram? Absolutely. And the reason is because relevancy matters. Even the most perfect potential customer isn't going to even think about converting if you don't feel relevant to them. You have to resonate. So what is the trick to resonating with your audience and actually growing your business in a cost-effective way through marketing? So there's multiple components to relevancy. The core of advertising is to get in front of the right people at the right place, at the right time, and with the right message. That's the core of what you're trying to do. But at different stages of your marketing, you're not going to get all of these right. But this is what the core is. The ultimate goal is to tick all of the boxes, at least for conversion-focused marketing. And growth marketing often leads in towards that conversion-focused growth strategy, and it's critical. But you might be bringing awareness, and when you're looking at growing the awareness of your brand, you're really focused on two things: hitting the right people with the right message. You're in that planting a seed phase, and your focus is on finding your people and hitting them with a message that helps them remember you. That's the sole focus of awareness, is remembering. And people forget that not a lot of brands are good at that these days. So if I asked you to think of the last ad you saw on Instagram, you see an ad 1 in every 4 posts. You probably can't remember it unless you convert it. Awareness is critical, and it's getting more difficult. Awareness is the act of getting people to recognize your brand and to start thinking about needing your product or service. To think of this simply, it's just the art of sparking curiosity. And then as you move them down the funnel, you want to start thinking about hitting them at the right place. So where they encounter the problem that your solution fits. Example, or in the right moment of intent, which we'll talk about in a second. But when you hit people at the right place, they start considering you. They're starting to actively think about you. It might not be the right time to convert, but you have them on the right track. So consideration is the process which you move people from awareness to engaging. The curiosity has sparked enough interest to reach out, maybe pass on some lead information, or maybe they add your product to cart if you're in a B2C scenario. But it's at this point that you really start to see the potential customer. And that moves all the way down to into a customer converting, which is hitting someone at the right place, time, and with the right message, hitting the nail on the head across the board. So this is where you find people. Yes, that might be an impulse buy on social because you happen to catch them where they had a moment of time to actually, just do the transaction, or they might actually have seeked you out, but it is all you're looking for. At this point, you have acquired either a customer or the information that you can use to move them through an activation process if need be, depending on how you've set up your conversion goals. But when it moves into the potential stage, that's where activation comes in. So in B2C marketing, acquisition is usually a purchase. So there's not usually an activation process as such, but normally there's an extra step in B2B marketing called activation. So usually you have a lead time. So acquisition in B2B might be a lead, but activation or a nurturing sales process may follow to drive users to take the intended action you wish them to take. So understanding the activation process is critical if your business requires this process. So for your B2C company, this doesn't mean that there is no afterthought after purchase. Customer nurturing, retention, potential lifetime value, and repeat customers are all critical things to think about here as well. So that's why I like to look at this. You'll see a lot of B2B reference throughout this in terms of, the activation process, looking at the nurturing side, thinking about that lifetime value. And the reason I put that in there, knowing that often half the audience is B2C, is because the customer process doesn't stop at the purchase either. Can they become a repeat customer? How can you bring them back time and time again? Can like lots of subscription models really think about their retention and their lifetime value, but not enough B2C customers do, from my experience. So once you understand the fundamentals of the key funnel areas, you can start thinking about the potential channels that are best suited to that goal. So what is your business solving for? Do you have a known solution to a problem? Great if people know they need a solution you offer and have a problem. You can often jump into all areas of the funnel, including a heavy focus on conversion first marketing, if that's the case. So if you have a known solution to a known problem, people are going to seek that out. Because you can leverage that high intent marketing channel like Google Ads, for example, more effectively if you're that known solution provider. But because people search for what they're looking for. But in contrast, if you have invented a new solution, for example, you will have to set aside budget for awareness and consideration side of the funnel. So someone can't buy what they don't know exists. Someone can't look for what they don't know exists. You have to make them aware and consider that solution first. Often this doesn't come back to brand. So I'm not referring to someone searching for a brand solution for something in this instance. I am just saying solution in general. So let's just take the example of a very basic example of, say, a plumber. If you are not, brand loyal to a particular plumber, then you're just going to search for plumber and you're just going to seek out a service, someone who does that. And that's a known solution. But if someone came up for a whole new invention on how to fix pipes that wasn't plumbing, you wouldn't know about it. It's not a general thing people would know about. So you'd have to make people aware that this is a new thing first. So the last piece that's very difficult and probably the most difficult to solve for when it comes to paid acquisition is if you are bringing a new solution to a table for a problem people also really aren't aware that they have. if you have to also tell someone that they have a problem and here's the solution to that problem, that is the most difficult nut to crack. It's often something I say, I'm not sure if this is going to work when people come to me first, because it's a really difficult one to look at. So you need to start leveraging social more if you're on that consideration awareness phase, and you can start enlisting the channels like Google Ads, Bing, Pinterest, search-based platforms much more effectively. TikTok, interestingly, I've noticed a lot of reports recently around the younger demographics using it as a search tool. So that's something to be aware of as well. In terms of TikTok as a social channel, is also heavily becoming a search channel as well. So here's another way to look at that flow. So from the starting point for a customer, are they aware that their problem exists? Do they know to search for it? You can see the more important channels that come into play, like SEO and SEM. SEO is search engine optimization. SEM is search engine marketing. SEM is the paid variation, essentially, when it's search-based queries. So whereas if you need to build on that awareness and consideration flow, it's critical that you look to other channels first and foremost. The flow continues through to remarketing or activation if required, and loops until the customer is brought through the funnel. Mapping your customer journey is going to be a crucial part of the platform decision-making process when it comes to customer acquisition. This isn't also to say that you might need elements of both in your campaigns. You might find that some people are more aware of your solution than others, for example, for a particular reason. A good example of this is we work with someone who has this really nice audio recording feature to their product. And they target podcasters a lot. And that's a really natural progression there. A podcaster is naturally going to know that they need really high quality audio. But maybe someone who does videos on YouTube isn't as aware. So they may need to do a lot of awareness and consideration, focus targeting initially for the content creator and not as much for maybe the podcaster. That's just a little example. So you might find that some people are more aware of that solution for a particular reason, and that you need to dig into both sides to get the kind of volume that you need for actual growth over time. Because you might tap out one market that's really relevant to you and you have to dive into another. So you have to think about this in a few different layers, depending on your target persona there as well. Once you've mapped the type of audience you need to chase dependent on that problem solution fit, the next step is to start looking at the different channels available to you. So different channels have different levels of expense attached to them and different levels of intent. So this is just a generic example, but Twitter is very low intent, also very, very cheap. Google Ads, in contrast, is very high intent, but is also going to cost you more than Twitter. This is a generic map because based on the most common scenario that I see, though this may not be true for every business. So for example, if you're in the crypto space, Twitter might be a lot higher intent for you because that's also where that audience largely hangs out. And then Snapchat, in contrast, might become the lowest intent. Each cost versus intent map is going to look slightly different for every business, but the principles of what you're looking for typically remain the same. So how much are you willing to spend for what level of intent? Google Ads is great because you can typically just start getting customers. But if you're early on, you're going to have to figure out how cost effective it is. And there's lots of little things that make Google Ads not cost effective. And we'll go through one of the key ones later, which is quality score. The other thing to note here is that this cost intent matrix can be used for other purposes, not just customer acquisition. So say, for example, you are thinking of experimenting with your pricing. You want to probably hit a high intent audience fast to get a gauge on that. You know, here that Google Ads might be the fastest route to figuring out what the best conversion rate and pricing is going to be, because the intent of the audience is so high that you can bring through that funnel very, very quickly and figure out which price point is converting the highest with an A/B test. But if you're testing your pricing on Twitter, you're going to be there for a very long time figuring out what the right path is. That's because you're not going to get very many conversions from the platform. And it could be argued that the amount of time and money you spend on Twitter to even get that far might actually end up being more than Google Ads, because the length of time is going to be so long to get that across as well. But in contrast, if you're testing messaging and just trying to assess what's going to resonate best with your audience, looking to a cheaper option for your audience might be more viable. Again, you have to tie all of these things back to where your customers are hanging out, what that action points are to begin with as well. The other most really important thing to consider with all of this mapping is that it's critical just to keep experimenting. So the reason being that you could eventually start tapping out on channels. I think it was Reforged, Craig. Was it Reforged that coined this term originally?
It was Andrew Chen, actually. Yeah.
Andrew
who's
Chen.
now at Andreessen, but yeah, was one of the original Reforged people. And it's fascinating. And it's like so true.
But they coined the term, essentially, the law of shitty click-throughs, which is that something that you should be looking out for. So typically on every channel, your cost starts out high, you get better at it, the costs go down. And then as you start to scale the channel, the costs go back up again, because you start hitting ceilings and different things like that as well. So that's why you need to keep experimenting on different platforms, because you're going to start seeing this happen. This doesn't happen as quickly as it looks on the screen here either, but over time. Once you have thought through the platforms, so the next thing you need to understand is the metrics that are going to matter most to your business. So the awareness and consideration phase is often referred to as the top of the funnel. So it's the metrics associated with the phase of early relevancy, curiosity, and remembering. So when you're looking at this phase of the funnel, you're really concerned with things like your impressions, your reach, potentially your click-through rate. Your campaigns are typically optimized for this goal and may rarely move people into the middle of the funnel. So that's important to note. I think a lot of people create campaigns expecting to move people through this in one fell sweep, but actually it's a multiple campaign process that does this. So, and I'll go through this in the second half of the presentation, but essentially different types of campaigns get you different types of results. And if you're optimizing for awareness, you're going to optimize for one of these results. You're looking at these metrics really closely. But campaign goals are critical to align with the funnel of the stage, or with the funnel stage there. So a separate campaign typically brings users through the funnel flow, when we'll just discuss that as well. So what you're looking at here is that impressions, reach, click-through rate. I'd also factor in things like frequency. We'll be going through all the different metrics and KPIs that might be relevant to your business later on as well as we go through this. As users move into the middle of the funnel, you're going to be looking at if they have moved into the trial phase, potentially a lead capture process. If you're in the B2C market, this is probably going to all happen a whole lot quicker for you, because the middle of the funnel might be just your add to cart phase. And then the process to purchase might happen very, very quickly in comparison to B2B. I mean, we have clients on the B2B side that their lead time is so long that the ad platforms can't even map it back to the conversion point, and we have to use like a fully offline conversion process with their internal data to pull that all back in using offline conversions. So sometimes on B2B, you could be quite literally waiting months to figure out what's going on, whereas with B2C, someone might just add to cart and purchase in less than 5 minutes. So again, the reason I'm focusing on the B2C or the B2B side here is because I think the benefits of looking at that longer view is beneficial to the B2C market too. It gets you thinking about that lead capture, email marketing, customer life cycles. When you start thinking about, wow, look what the B2B people have to do. That being said, this is at the point where your customer is very warm. They're ready to take action, but haven't completed the final step yet. And that's where these middle of funnel metrics come into play. Lastly, your conversion metrics. So someone has either moved out of the lead, trial, or add to cart phase and has moved into the I'm officially a customer phase. It's at this point you can really start to assess just how many customers this is described as subscribers in this screenshot in this instance. So you can start to assess just how many customers you have gained from a channel, how much it's cost you to bring them there. So that's what your overall CAC is, or your customer acquisition cost. It's critical that you understand the accumulation of costs that come through to this. So a lot of agencies, for example, might be very quick to give you your return on ad spend based on your conversion focused campaigns. But how much should the awareness cost? How much should all the other things cost that brought you there? And that's more critical for a business to understand than just the ROI direct from the ad platform. The ROI direct from the ad platform may not consider the other email marketing agency that you had to use because you needed an activation flow to finally get people to cross the line. And, you know, there could be 101 things going on. You as a business owner should be able to map that the whole way down. It's critical to understand that accumulation of costs. It's just so you know just how much it's going to cost you to get a customer. Once you know how much it costs you to get a customer, channels become more scalable. In time, you're going to be able to map this against, you know, lifetime value of a customer too, to assess your growth potential from channels too. So say, for example, it costs you $100 to get one subscriber and you have a $20 a month subscription, but your average lifetime value is 3 months. That doesn't make any sense. You're losing money all day. But if your lifetime value is typically 18 months, that's a very different story. You're gonna make that money back in time and more. So understanding your lifetime value, your retention cycles, and all of that is really important for that flow of information as well. So to dig a little deeper into the different metrics, here's a breakdown of the different metrics that you're going to see across the different channels. Each of them have a slightly different meaning. So when we refer to CPM, that's your cost per 1,000 impressions, the click-through rate, the percentage of people who click on that ad. Your CPC is your cost per click, and your LPV is your landing page view. Too many people focus on CPC, or cost per click, particularly on Facebook and other advertising platforms. Just as a quick note, when I reference Facebook, I mean the full Meta suite of things. I'm just still used to saying the word Facebook. But Facebook counts any click as a click. That might be the see more, it might be anything, might be bounced and all of that. Usually for every 1,000 clicks that Facebook reports, you're probably only going to get half that or so in actual landing page views. A landing page view is someone actually hitting your website. So just be really wary of that. If you're doing traffic campaigns, or if you're ever optimizing for traffic to a site, always optimize for the landing page view, never optimize for the click or the link click. It's never the same. So it's just something to note. Your CPA then is your cost per acquisition. Your CAC is your customer acquisition cost. Your LTV is your lifetime value, and your frequency then is the number of time a user has seen your advert. Frequency is really important because, yes, you need multiple touch points, but not all on the same day. For example, if you set an ad to look at the frequency for yesterday and it's 4, that's a little bit scarier than, say, you look at the last 30 days and it's 4. It's how many times people are seeing your ads. Are you driving people insane? In other words, is a quick way to think about your frequency. Also, ad blindness is real. You know, if you see the same thing over and over, you just start to not see it, which is a critical point on the creative side as well. So knowing your metrics, you can start to dig a little deeper into the domino impact these metrics have on one another. So CPM, how well is your advert resonating with your audience? You are paying for the luxury of getting people's attention. If your ad does not do that, it's going to cost you more. Simple as. That's why cost per 1,000 or CPM is different in different campaigns. It depends on how well the advert is resonating, and you can just make decisions on your creatives based on that. Your click-through rate. How willing are people to click on your advert? If you have a pretty poor click-through rate, you could be asking yourself, well, is my CPM too high, or is my call to action okay? Is it clear what I want someone to do? Why are they not clicking? Are you telling them to click? Are you telling them to shop now? Are you telling them to do what you want them to do? Your CPC, so how many people click on the advert? I would always ask yourself, is this the campaign goal? The reason for that being, as I just said, that landing page view is more critical. How many people actually ended up on your website? Is this hugely different from your link clicks? It should be hugely different, but you should optimize for it rather than the cost per click. Your CPA, how much is it going to cost you to actually acquire a customer lead? This can be a custom point of a conversion as well. And then you have to ask yourself, are your early metrics impacting all of this? So if your CPM is too high, then your click-through rate is going to be low. Then your CPC is going to be too high. Then you're not going to get enough landing page views in a cost-effective way to get a customer acquisition. So it's all, the dominoes start to fall down on each other very quickly once you've been looking at your metrics in a domino kind of frame of mind. The lifetime value, is it going to be cost-effective long-term? You might not know that in the early stages of your business, and that's okay. You don't need to know it in the early stages of your business, but you do need to know it. You do need to start mapping it over time so that as soon as you have a gauge, you be able to work forwards. And it might just be that you hit 6 months into your business and you're like, hey, pretty much everyone has stuck around. Great, I can map to 6 months at least for now. It's also a little bit dangerous to map too closely to your very early customers because early adopters tend to have the longest retention. So try to look at a slightly, as your business goes on in terms of length of time, I would start thinking about the second, third, fourth cohorts in more detail when I'm thinking about my retention mapping, especially for paid acquisition channels. So these metrics are important to really understand. We can pause here on the half hour for a couple of minutes if anyone wants to grab a cup of tea or ask a few questions before I dig into the back end of the platforms and how all of that is gonna work.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm definitely going to grab a drink and I'll be back in a couple minutes. What do you think? 4 minutes?
Perfect.
5 minutes?
I'll jump back on at, I'm not sure what time it is. Eastern, is it 2?
It's 1:59. Yeah,
2:05. So Eastern will come back.
2:05. Okay.
Perfect. See you in a sec. Setting up to kick back off. Perfect. So welcome back, everyone. Now I'm going to start really digging into the different platforms more granularly. So I'm going to starting with Facebook and Google Ads. Again, here when I reference Facebook, I'm also referring to Instagram or any other company under the Meta umbrella. That's because they all work under the one ads manager anyway. The reason this session is focused on Google Ads and Meta is because it shows the two sides of what we discussed earlier, the high intent and the lower intent. This isn't to say that you can't get conversions from Facebook, because you absolutely can. And you can also get a ton of awareness and consideration from using Google Ads, like display ads. YouTube is owned by Google, so you can use that channel as well. But they're typically better at one or the other. Google Ads is typically, but not always, better at converting. And Facebook is typically, but not always, better at the awareness and consideration phase. That being said, typically I try to drive as much conversions from both when customers are chasing ROI first and foremost. So let's kick off with the high intent advertising. So this is a Google search and Google shopping. So arguably, these are the two highest return on investment placements from Google Ads, judging by our client portfolio at least. The search placement can be seen on the left and the shopping on the right. These are high intent adverts because they are being placed in front of the user at the right time, in the moment they are seeking the relevant information. So that is the critical thing. You're putting something in front of someone who's looking for it with Google Ads. In contrast, here's an example of the world of social advertising, which is more consideration based. It can still certainly lead to conversions, but the social placement is on the might want to buy side always. It works better for impulse buys typically. That's often why B2B companies strike some difficulty in growing ROI-based campaigns on the social media advertising side. Now, you could dig a little bit deeper here as well. So there's Google ads, which you saw here, and you can see Facebook ads here. Now, these are high intent placements on Google. If you were using Google ads and you had a display campaign running, that's not going to be as high intent. That's almost falling into the same bracket as the social side. Same kind of falls into place on the social side, TikTok included, as well as Facebook and other places. When you're in the feed, you're in a more high intent placement typically than, for example, in stories, or if you're the advert that pops up in the middle of a video someone's being watching. Think of the different placements on the platform as well. Those are really relevant to your adverts just as much as the actual the platform itself is one thing, but platforms always have a multitude of placements within that as well. So just make sure that you're thinking about that as well. Regardless of the channel, you have to start by setting up tracking. We actually actively refuse to work with clients when they want to decline the tracking setup, because it's an absolutely vital first step towards success in advertising. It's more than giving you results, especially at the beginning. A lot of new businesses will say, well, I'll just feel the results. If I have no customers right now and I start getting a few and I've just turned on advertising, it stands to reason that the advert was the reason for that. But the Facebook pixel, or the new variation, the conversions API on Facebook, the Google tracker, all of those need the opportunity to learn about your customer, to learn about the action that you want it to learn about, so that it can better target your campaigns. So Google Tag Manager, the little screenshot you're seeing here on the right, that's just a list of different things it can track. You can do a lot of customization there. Google Tag Manager is the best resource I use for the ease of tracking setup, unless you're on Shopify. Shopify automates everything. It's fantastic. But Google Tag Manager could be an entire session unto itself. I don't have time to dig into it in a hugely deep fashion right now, but I would recommend checking it out, because you can set up all your triggers, which are your events. So thank you page reach, purchase point reach, add to cart, all of these different things that happen. You can layer in these triggers using Google Tag Manager. And then using Google Tag Manager, you can connect your Facebook pixel, your Google ads tracker, all of that. And you can say, when this happens, let Google know, let Facebook know, let all these platforms know. And if they come from an ad, make sure that's tracked and all of that. iOS 14 has obviously impacted a lot of this as well. But tracking is still the critical first step. The next thing that is really critical is UTM parameters, especially post iOS 14. Tracking options like the Facebook Pixel primarily use cookie-based tracking, which is heavily impacted by iOS 14. So it's also critical to start looking at the new variations. So if you're working on Facebook ads at the moment, you'll see that they have launched their conversions API. That conversion API pings your events from the server rather than website cookies. I'm a marketer and I set this up all the time. And to be completely honest, I don't fully understand the ins and outs of server cookies and all of that. What I do know is that when I make the change across all of the clients, the results are a whole lot better and the amount of data I can see is a whole lot better. All the platforms guide you through this step by step. It's very much a copy and paste job to get this all set up. You don't necessarily need to have the depth of experience of a developer. We're lucky on our team. We have someone who's really good at this and has a lot of interest in how these things are structured. But that is certainly not to say that there's probably not anyone on our team that couldn't go in and set this up from the guide either. It's a very simple process that you can work through. So I'd highly recommend just going through it. There's plenty of videos on YouTube as well that give you that step-by-step guide if needed. This is critical after the iOS 14 changes. Just for reference, if anyone isn't familiar with the iOS 14 changes, after Apple rolled out iOS 14 for Apple devices, they put a blocker in place essentially. So every time someone opened an app for the first time after they upgraded, it would say, would you like us to stop this app tracking you? And that obviously ruined a lot of things for Facebook in particular, because they, as most people know, have a pretty bad privacy rap. So people had the opportunity to opt out, they're going to opt out. So we have to navigate around that. Once you've fed in your data to the platforms, so you've set up your tracking, you've looked at Google Tag Manager, you've set up your pixels, your conversion trackers, regardless of the platform, you have to get the tracking set up first. You're going to start thinking about your audiences, because your data is feeding into your audiences. Your data is just as much about targeting as it is reporting. So this is the Facebook Audience Manager, and this is where you're going to leverage your data to target on the Facebook side. So now you'll notice this little red line I have here. That differentiates what is considered an on-platform and an off-platform data point. So off-platform data are all your sources of data, your websites, your customer lists, anything that you want to upload onto the platform or send to Facebook that doesn't originate from Facebook. Those are what are impacted by the iOS 14 privacy changes. That's why remarketing to people who have hit your website but not converted has suddenly become really bad in the last year or so. But your Facebook sources are still perfectly reliable. I have pivoted a lot to using these, and most campaigns need to do this process now. The reason being is that the action of everything that is a Facebook source happens on Facebook. The user didn't leave the platform to do that action, so it essentially counts. It doesn't get disregarded. So you'll notice here that one of the nice little features for building audiences is from video views. So often now what I'll do is I'll run a longer form video, then I'll target people who watch more than 75% of it, because that indicates a strong intent. If someone's watched 75% of a 4-minute video on Facebook, I would consider that pretty strong intent. Plus it captures the full audience picture. So if I had sent those people to the website and then tried to retarget them, I would lose well over 50% of the audience potentially. People watch on platform, not off platform when it's a video, for example. If you're posting in groups, so if you're leveraging Facebook groups, you can also create audiences of people who engaged, viewed, interacted with the posts that you've put in there, and retarget them with ads too, because you can see here you've got the Facebook page option, and you can select post, you can select a specific post and build the audience off that. It doesn't matter where you placed that post, so long as it was on the platform. This is a great workaround to the fact that you can't otherwise target the groups through the ads manager. You can't go into the ads manager and select a specific Facebook group to target. And the Facebook groups are really great to get really niche groups of people. But this can only be done if you are posting as your business page and not from a personal page. The reason for that is because the business page is tied to the pixel, which is pulling the data, and not your personal page. So if you're using groups, you have to get in there with your business page, which is easier said than done. Anyone who enjoys Facebook groups will know that business pages are often not welcome in there unless they, are providing a lot of value. The other thing to be wary of as well, if you're posting in groups specifically with the foresight of building audiences, you're going to be wanting to post pretty high value relevant content in there. You do not want, don't even touch a sales pitch in there. You want to gather as much data as you can from that, and you want to provide as much value as you can from that, and then you can retarget afterwards with whatever you need to. That point in time, you're just going to get kicked out of the group if you're not really careful. So just to bear that in mind as well. On the other side, here's a little look into where you can add a lot of data on the Google side. Like Facebook, you can use Google sources or your own. And this is a little snapshot of Google sources, because everyone's kind of familiar with, the remarketing, connecting your website and things like that, but not a lot of people look at this side of Google. So I'd really recommend checking out these, but this screenshot might be the biggest, but in the blue writing underneath, you can say, you can create audiences of people who visit websites such as, and you can put a list of them in there. That's a great way to build audiences from competitor sites. You can see there's an option, people who searched for any of these terms on Google. So you can make an audience of people who've searched for specific things. You can get really creative with this. So let's say, for example, you have a competitor campaign running. And when you bid on your competitor's key terms, it's really expensive. The reason for that is that your quality score doesn't match up. Google essentially recognizes that you're not that brand, you're not the competitor you're bidding on, and it's going to spike your costs. In some instances, you might even be able to use the keyword in your ad because it's copyrighted. So you're in a little bit of a sticky situation. But you could also build an audience of people who've searched that competitor name in the last, say, 30 days. And now we're searching something else. So they're searching a generic term relevant to the business. And you know that they were recently looking for a competitor. You've also been to that competitor's reviews and you know that they're particularly bad at X and you happen to be really good at X. So now your ads can read, we do this. You can position your messaging really strategically around this. So there's lots of different ways you can mix and match these audiences. You could say, you could upload a customer list, a list of your customers. And if they search for your competitor, you can maybe start doing some clawback messaging. There's 101 ways you can start mixing and matching these audiences. I'd recommend checking this out, and it can quickly become a really granular spider web. Nobody probably needs all of that, but there's lots that can be done. If you find you're losing customers at a frantic rate to a competitor, it's something you absolutely need to think about. If you find that you're getting a lot of customers from a particular competitor, you could start doing this. There's lots of other ways to do this too. For example, with long lead time situations. So someone who's about to buy a car, they're probably in a 2 or 3 month process now of looking at different makes, different types, unless they're particularly brand loyal. And they're going to maybe look at different garages, different places. There's a lot of different search terms that go into that funnel. So in the awareness phase, they might actually not be looking on social at all. They might be researching different things about a car at their budget point. You can start building audiences of those people who search those kinds of things and start building your awareness, your display ads around those people and bringing them through the funnel with you specifically. Otherwise, they'll go to multiple sources. They may go to multiple sources anyway, but you always want to be the predominant source potentially. So there's lots of different ways you can look at this audience structuring. I think a lot of people go to Google Ads and think, here's my keyword I'm going to bid on, and they don't do enough on the audience structuring side. And it can be, you can be kind of be the underdog once you do this, because no one does it, to be honest. I don't think I've ever audited an account in my life that had it set up. People completely disregard audiences for some reason on Google. If you're in the e-commerce space, it's also critical that you connect your catalog of products to Facebook and Google. This can be done via the Commerce Manager. This is the Facebook variation. If you want to pull your product list into Google, you're going to use what's called the Google Merchant Center for that. This has to be set up before you can run shopping campaigns on either platform. So if you want to run ads on Google, you have to have a Google Merchant Center set up for the shopping side, and same with Facebook on the Commerce Manager. Once you have your tracking in place and audiences set up, this is where it's time to start thinking about your campaign structure. It's important to note that when you ask, or what you ask for is what you get with Facebook or any of the other platforms for that matter. So that's why I break it down like this. The interface on Facebook has slightly changed, but the names of these campaigns have remained the same. So when you go in, you'll see all these, they'll just won't look like the screen you're seeing here. But cold is essentially that awareness, consideration is that warm phase, and your hot audience is conversions. You can jump directly into any of these without bringing people through the funnel if you have a product people are just ready to buy, for example. So often I'll jump to the conversions where I can for clients to bring in that ROI as fast as possible. But sometimes the awareness and consideration phase, as we discussed earlier, are critical. So you need to factor those in potentially sometimes as well. Facebook is, at the end of the day, a little bit of a snake. I mean, it does just give you what you want. You have to think about people's behavior. So like how I behave on Facebook might be different to, say, Craig. So Craig might scroll through Facebook and like things. I might be a bit more of a shopper, browsing, clicking in and out of things. Craig is probably going to see an ad that's optimized for engagement, and I'm probably going to see an ad optimized for traffic, even though potentially I'm not warm audience, and he also might not be in the warm audience from the bigger picture perspective. So you have to just factor in that a little bit as well. This is what that structuring looks like on Google Ads. Google is a bit more complex, as there's two pieces to the intent puzzle. The first is selecting what you want from here, like you're seeing here, sales, leads, traffic, so on and so forth. And the second part is the bidding strategy. So you can tell Google that you want sales and then take a second step of telling them to optimize for conversion value. You could also tell it that you want sales and you could optimize just for as many conversions as possible. Or you could tell it that you want sales, but you're just willing to bid on clicks. So you can play with the intent levels there. Or you might want leads and bid on a target cost per acquisition, or you might want traffic and you might optimize for a cost per click. Again, these are all dependent on your campaign goals and reflecting back on that funnel points that we were looking at earlier. Location is another critical factor to think about with your campaign structure and targeting. So this is one of my favorite little options. So on Facebook, you can pin a location or building. So the blue circle you're seeing here, or the little green pin in the list of them. And you can also use an exclude feature to drop pins and block them out. So you can see what I'm doing here is I pin a building with a blue tick, and then I exclude points around it so that I hone really niche in on a building. This will allow you to hone in on a very specific area. I understand that this looks a little bit scary, but this is actually helpful if you're doing a pop-up store, or you want to target people attending a conference or went to a meeting and you want to hit that office block with testimonials. Maybe you're in the bridal space and there's a bridal fair. This is how you can potentially stay up on top of mind. There's tons of uses for this. I would say that if you ever plan on doing this, do not put more than like $1 on this campaign. The reason for that is because the location is so tight that your frequency will ramp really far up too quickly if you optimize too far up with budget. The next piece of the puzzle is your creative. So here are two examples of high performing creatives from the past campaigns that we've run on Facebook. On the left here, you will see that we use this little great multiple message trick. So this client needed to tell their audience 4 key things: that you could work out from home, that there was recipes, and the workouts were both suitable for advanced and beginners users. So the post here or the advert here on the left, for context, Derval O'Rourke, she's an Irish Olympic athlete. So the assumption of her workouts being advanced would be very easy to assume. So that's why we needed to make sure that anyone felt like they could do this. So what we did was, okay, we don't have more than 3 seconds to capture people's attention. There's no way we're going to be able to tell them that it's okay if you're a beginner and you can work out from home, and we've tons of healthy recipes, and it's okay if you're advanced too. So we split the screen in 4, gave everyone the message at the same time. So you can we hit home quickly, essentially. You're short on time with social media. So something like this is great if you need to get multiple messages across at the right time. On the piece of content on the right, look at the 5 gold star emojis and the testimonial that follows. We've found that time and time again that this social proof method works really well. 5 gold stars. I've tested this, I'd say nearly on every account so far. It always performs in the top 2. 3 gold stars, no. 1 anything else, 5 gold stars. Even just without the gold stars, I think it's something to do with the gold stars. It's hard to pin these things down because you just see the results and you're often not sure the exact correlation. But yeah, no matter how much we swap out what testimonial is in there, the 5 gold stars works really well as well. You can see on the left, the copy on the fitness ad worked really well as well. Lots of emojis tend to work well, especially in B2C. This isn't the type of messaging we would use very regularly in B2B context. I must add an example of one of those in there, but this is very helpful on the B2C side. You can see here as well that we're just using one call to action throughout. You never want to have, like, I was auditing a campaign before and it was like, the creative was an influencer talking about it. And in the call to action was to shop now. But in the post, it said to listen to the full podcast episode with them. And it also said to shop. There was like, what do you want people to use? You only have a few seconds, don't confuse them. One advert, one message, one call to action. If you want to find other creatives, maybe your competitors, you can jump into the Facebook ads library and search for any company and look at the ads they have running. This is a great way to get an idea of what is working for other companies. So I monitored this library regularly for clients. So I'll keep an eye on what competitors have turned off. That's important too. If they're running an ad and suddenly it turns off, it's not working. There's a reason for that. What offers they're running and all of that. Also, if you're doing any online shopping for yourself, search for the company in here and you'll usually find their discount codes for their remarketing audience and you can just shop away with that. That's just a nice little trick I've picked up along the way from this. Black Friday's coming up, so eat your heart out with that one. Google, as of the last few weeks, has also launched their ad transparency network. So if you, on the screenshot on the left, it's a little bit difficult to read here, but if you search for a keyword that you know is going to, you have to force the ads to come up that you're looking for. So in this instance, I'm using Nike shoes. So let's say it's your competitor or something else. You're going to have to find a keyword, might be their brand name or something else that's going to bring their ad up. And then let me just get my mouse here. There's a little arrow that drops down here. And when you click on that, you get this see more ads option. And when you click on that, it will bring up all of their ads that they currently have running. This is really great. This is only available as of the last few weeks. But you can see here that in Ireland, this just defaulted to Ireland because that's where I'm based, but you can see that Nike Retail BV, which is verified in the Netherlands. A lot of these companies are based in the Netherlands. I never knew this until I started digging through this. But anyway, neither here nor there, but I can see that in Ireland, they have more than 4,000 ads running. I can look at them all. I can look at, you can see here, there's a little all formats option. I can toggle that, look at their display, look at their video, look at their search. But you can do this for anyone at the moment, which is great. The beauty of this is that Google is currently forcing all advertisers to verify themselves and will shut down their ad account if they don't verify. And as soon as they do verify, their ads become available on this. So you may not have everyone in the mix yet, but I would say probably hitting 95% at this point. So they should be in there if they're running ads. But the trick is you have to get their ad up on Google first, which is a little bit annoying. When it comes to Google Ads, the big piece of the puzzle is getting your copyright. And what a lot of people think when they think of Google Ads is bidding on a keyword. And we talked about this earlier with the audience side as well. But actually, Google places emphasis on what's known as a quality score. So if the keyword you're bidding on is not in the ad and not on your landing page that you send them to, Google will charge you more for that click. So if your quality score is so it's ranked out of 10, first of all, but if your quality score is 10 out of 10, you're going to pay 80% less for a keyword than someone at 5 out of 10. If your score is 1 out of 10, you're going to be paying maybe 400% too much for that keyword. I'll give you an example. So if I tell Google that I'm willing to pay $2 for a keyword, and Craig says I can only pay $1. My landing page and ad is crap compared to Craig, but I'm willing to pay more. Craig is still going to have the higher chance of actually getting in that number 1 position and the lower cost per click, because half of Google's goal is to send people to the right place. It's not all about the highest bidder. So this is another place you can be the underdog here. And this is an example of an account change we did for a client. So between the 1st and 23rd of October in 2021, in comparison to this year is what this is showing. We went through all of their keywords. We went through all of the ads. We message matched them. We created custom landing pages for each of the keywords that were high speed using Unbounce. Unbounce.com is a fantastic resource. So their cost per click reduced to 30 cents from 179. There was a 2/3 reduction in their cost per conversion. We increased the amount of traffic to their website by about 100,000. And that was all by reducing their budget by 105,000 in that same time period. So now we can go to that client and say, do you want us to scale up an additional 105,000 here and get you, this extensive extra volume, or do you want to just spend less on your ads? Now they have flexibility of 100K a month, which is significant. So your quality score is really important. This screenshot you're seeing here was only search ads, no performance max. This was all just message matching structuring. We did nothing else. They're still only running search ads. So optimizing the message, creating high-speed landing pages with the focus on the keyword for each instance is absolutely painstaking. Don't get me wrong. If there's anyone from the team on the call that was part of this, then they'll know that it's a tedious process that we went through, but you can see the gains off the back of it, and it's critical. The last thing I want to leave people with is when it comes to reporting, you're going to have to map out the metrics that are important to you. You'll have a copy of these slides afterwards, so you can retrospectively look back at the relevant metrics from the screenshot or the slide that I had with that. But you're going to need to create a dashboard of sorts. We love to use Google Data Studio for this. Here's an example of one of our clients that we're running this micro experiment for. And they just want to have eyes on what's going on in that experiment. So this way they can just jump in with a link. We've sent them to Google Data Studio. They can see how much they spent. So in this instance, it's only, last week it was just 67 euro. It's a very small experiment. They can see that, they had 65,000 impressions, 698 clicks, 28 conversions. The conversion value was 695. And for every euro they spent, they got 10 euro 30 cent back. We have a blend of clients in Europe, so that's why this is in Europe, in euro as well. So you can see, and then it gives them a breakdown of the products that were sold as a result of that test. This is a performance max test. It's a new campaign type in Google, and they wanted to test it out. I've just blocked the product names for their privacy. So every dashboard is different depending on your business needs. But whether you're running Facebook, Google, whatever you're running, you can bring it all into one place in Google Data Studio. It's really flexible. You can connect HubSpot, you can connect a myriad of tools, to be honest. So it's really beneficial to look at. To wrap up, always, there's a lot to customer acquisition, especially in the paid space, but it all just comes back to relevancy. You just want to make sure your ads are hitting the right people at the right place in the right time with the right message, depending on where they are in your funnel. People don't hate adverts, they just hate irrelevant interruptions. So think about where you're placing your ad and who you're placing it for and what you're telling them. And that's what it all comes down to, just being as relevant as possible.